Hey, Cloudcast community, listen up. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a cloud-scale monitoring and analytics platform. Datadog was built to bring clarity to complex, dynamic applications, whether they're in the cloud, on-prem, in containers, or wherever you run your applications. With powerful dashboards, seamless integrations, and more than 250 technologies they can monitor, Datadog has you covered. Whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google services, your popular open source projects and products, or web security and APIs, Datadog can help you monitor them and help you collaborate around troubleshooting them and make sure they're running great. Datadog provides deep end-to-end visibility into the health and performance of modern applications. So try it yourself. Get yourself a free 14-day trial. Go to datadoghq.com/cloudcast. That's datadoghq.com/cloudcast to try out your free 14-day trial. And if you try it out, let them know your friends at Cloudcast sent you, and they'll send you a great, wonderful, soft, awesome t-shirt with the Datadog logo on it. I wear mine all the time. So once again, that's datadoghq.com/cloudcast. Thanks for listening, and here comes the show.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios in Raleigh, North Carolina, and guess what, boys and girls? It's both of us. Aaron, good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is my first time kind of doing the news segment up front.
That's right. So for folks that have been listening the last couple of weeks, we've been doing a news section, the Cloud News of the Week. Really, one topic that we're going to talk about this week, which I think surprised some people. If you've been following the industry, maybe it doesn't surprise you completely, but I think aspects of it will be very surprising. So, Aaron, the news of the week is that Google has, let me phrase this the way that it was written. Diane Greene has stepped down as CEO or president of the Google Cloud Platform, and Google has decided to hire Thomas Kurian, who was previously president and ran engineering for Oracle. So, thoughts on the news of Diane Greene no longer at Google and an Oracle person running Google Cloud?
Yeah. So, oh man. So first of all, it's interesting because Diane Greene probably came into a very different culture, and Kurian is going to come into a very different culture, right? The Oracle culture historically and the Google culture historically, and so I don't know. I just feel like it's. Yeah, they didn't get the results they wanted maybe, and they decided to make a change, but then they made a change with somebody who was a lot like the person they're replacing. So that's my early take on it is I kind of scratch my head and go, was that really going to change anything? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that seemed to be sort of the general consensus I saw from the Twitterverse and some of the early news articles was just I think it was the realization of like, hey, Google has a very unique culture. Google Cloud is sort of an extension of the Google culture, but it's not exactly the Google culture because it's a little different, right? They're interacting with end users as opposed to just delivering services. I'm sort of surprised that Google, after Diane, was quote unquote an outsider, that they didn't look internally and say, hey, maybe some of our things that are, working or maybe, need to work better is partially a culture thing. So it sounds like they don't think it's necessarily a culture thing. Diane sort of said in her final blog that, she had sort of set a time limit on how long she wanted to do this. It's, it's a big job. It's a lot of, it's hard on the family. And, but yeah, it will be very interesting because I think of all the things that we hear from people in terms of their complaints about the Google Cloud, technology is rarely one of them. It really is typically around just interacting with Google, and it's just not something that's like any other tech vendor. It's not like any other IT vendor. And if you asked most people how much they loved working with working with Oracle, that was never positive. So, you put those two things together and it's like, okay, how is that going to work? Are you solving a problem that you have, or are you just saying like, oh, people say we're not enterprisey enough, so let's go find the best enterprise person available type of thing. And two quick data points too. So a good friend of the show over the years, Sam Ramji, went to Google as VP once upon a time, and we were just kind of talking offline, and
he did make the comment of they don't do a lot of hiring externally at those, higher levels within the companies. And so, yeah, I just second it's slightly surprising. But then also the Kurian comment, I don't know if a lot of people know this or not, but he's actually a twin. George Kurian, his twin brother, runs NetApp. So
right.
He's the CEO at NetApp. And I just looked right now, NetApp is currently about a $17 billion valuation. And so how much does it suck for you when you're like the president of Oracle and you're coming over to run all of Google Cloud and you're still the disappointing brother at Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we're going to mention that show's going to drop just before Thanksgiving. So yeah, that has got to be a really interesting thing because when he was at Oracle, he was probably the more successful brother, and now he's the one that's trying to maybe catch up. I don't know. Yeah. So if anybody's got live feed from the Kurian household, that would be sort of interesting. So we don't mean to make fun. We really I think if anybody asks us our opinion about the three cloud providers, it's always we have sometimes some feedback technically or what it's like to interact with them, but I think we've always said the best thing the market could have is a healthy, robust set of competition between Amazon, Google, Azure, Alibaba, maybe a fourth or a fifth, an Oracle or an IBM or an upstart, because it helps the market. It brings prices to a price point. You don't have the 800-pound gorillas. So I hope Google has made a good choice. I hope they prove a lot of people wrong, because I think it's good for the market that does that. But I think it's going to be a while before we figure out if this was the right choice or not.
Agreed. Absolutely.
So, with that, we're going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week. As always, thank you to Datadog for sponsoring this segment. And folks, if you haven't been out to the Datadog site, go out, take a look at it. The link is in the show note, and we appreciate them being a sponsor. So with that, let's get on to our interview. Okay, let's do this. Aaron, we have got a full house today. Not only do we have the two of us, which has been the first time in a long time. How are you doing?
Good. Yeah, I was actually just thinking, when is the last time we've both been on the show? It's been months.
I know. The joys of a podcast and work travel and all that stuff. But so not only do we have the two of us, which is going to confuse people with the voices a little bit, but we've got two great guests. So we're very, very lucky. We talk a lot about the technology behind the scenes, the things that move bits, the things that support applications and, kind of core technologies sometimes, but we don't always talk enough about some of the technologies that really help, shape culture, help collaboration, help companies be really efficient in what they do. And so today, very, very excited to have, as we do a lot, a really exciting new startup company. We've got both Kurt Schrader, who is the founder and CEO, and Mitch Wainer, who is the chief marketing officer of a new company called Clubhouse. And Kurt and Mitch, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about what motivated you guys to start Clubhouse.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having us, guys. So this is Kurt. We started Clubhouse, my co-founder Andrew and I, 3 or 4 years ago to try to solve sort of the problem that we had where I've been running engineering teams for many years, watched them grow, and eventually get to the point where nobody really knows what's going on. You see a lot of segmentation across the teams. Teams sort of get in their own silos, and it gets harder and harder to see, not just across the engineering teams what's going on, but across all the teams in an organization and how all those teams need to come together. And from my point of view, it felt like we needed new tools to help us give across the company better visibility into not just building and planning software, but all the different pieces from marketing to sales, everything that you need to do in today's environment where you're doing deploys or pushing software out the door 20, 30 times a day sometimes. How do you include everybody? How do you make sure we've updated this piece? How does the marketing team, how does the support team, how does everybody know, right? So we tried to build a tool to help organize engineering and product teams, but also include the rest of the company so you can sort of see what happens and people feel comfortable and safe coming in and understanding what's happening and also contributing as software development continues to sort of increase its speed and to get things out the door.
Yeah, nice. And so you guys have really interesting backgrounds too. So tell us just a little bit more about, prior to this, some of the diverse backgrounds you both have, and then we'll kind of dig into the problems Clubhouse solves.
Sure, yeah. My background, I was CTO at a company here in New York, an ad tech company called Intent Media. I started with about 5 of us, grew to about 150 people when I left. I built the engineering team there. It was about a third of the company. Before that, for a long time, I was a consultant. I worked at places everywhere from big places like The Gap, a bank in Cleveland for a couple of years. I was at GM for a little bit of time. All the way down to smaller startups, so ad tech startups, a bioinformatics startup for a while. So I've sort of been all over and run engineering teams at all sizes of organizations. This is kind of my background.
Hey, so this is Mitch Wainer. Before I jumped into the startup world, I started out as a web developer in my career, and then shifted into marketing later on. Being a web developer myself, I knew the pain points that a lot of developers feel when using complex tools in the market, and so I co-founded a cloud infrastructure as a service company based here in New York called DigitalOcean. It's about a 500-person organization now, generating north of 200 million in revenues per year, with over 1 million developer accounts on the platform. So scaled that business from the ground up, was there for 6 years, and, met Kurt through an intro through Battery Ventures, and just, saw a lot of similarities, between DigitalOcean and Clubhouse in terms of, building a product that developers love using, and just seeing so much love in the market for, what they've created. And, really focusing on like the end user experience, and, building a product that is simple, intuitive, but still powerful to, enable software development at scale. And so I got really excited about that. It's a, big reason why I'm here is because I want to help, tell that story, and to help shape the brand, and also build a community and give back to the community in a lot of different ways to, support, developers and product leaders as they build software. So that's what I'm super passionate about. And we're now over 1,000 organizations. This company has grown via word of mouth to date, with no marketing, no sales. It's just, it's a product that has sold itself, which is truly incredible. It kind of speaks to, how well this product is built. And, Kurt and Andrews have done a tremendous job, building a fantastic team here. And, we have a lot of exciting features and products coming down the pipe in the near future.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit, before we dig into that, tell us a little bit about what it's like to do a startup, not in Silicon Valley, because we talk to so many startups that are based in the Valley, but you both have some experience. This isn't your first go round for either of you, but doing venture capital and dealing with venture capital, and dealing with a completely different talent pool, and just at times completely different cultures. It's kind of hard to maybe contrast against something you don't haven't lived in day in and day out. But just tell us a little bit about the New York City scene.
Yeah, so I've been back in New York for about 10 or so years now. Before that, I was in San Francisco for 4 years. So I came back here to do my last company, and obviously decided to stay here to do Clubhouse. And I think it's a really interesting contrast. When I was in San Francisco, obviously it's tech all the time. Anywhere you go in San Francisco, you go to a bar, you go to a restaurant. It's just, and a lot of the Bay Area at this point, just constant sort of, let's talk about tech. The person next to you is talking about tech. Somebody's doing a deal. I was just out there a couple of weeks ago in Palo Alto, and I listened to the angel investors at the coffee shop at the table next to me, make a deal, right? So, I mean, that's one thing. Like New York, and I think a lot of other places give you sort of a breadth of sort of experience, which for a tool like what we're building, has been super helpful. We've been able to hire in people from different backgrounds. You get a lot of different points of view, and I think that's been super helpful as we've sort of grown here. But the other thing, when I came back 10 years ago, it was kind of like, how are we even going to hire one engineer? And over the last 10 years in New York, especially, we've seen a real sea change there. I think there are 8,000 startups in New York now versus, I don't know, maybe 100 when we started our last companies. And, when I got back, it was like, where are we going to hire? What kind of startups, exist in New York? It was like, well, I don't know, Bloomberg, right? Like it wasn't anything like what I had just dealt with. So I think New York has, we'll never catch up to Silicon Valley, but there's just a wide, a lot of people here now doing a lot of startup things. And I think the other interesting thing is just, from the New York perspective, especially, and probably a lot of places, right? I think there's a lot of good reasons that people don't want to live in San Francisco, Bay Area. It's expensive. It's expensive here too, but you get kind of a different, level of experience, right? We also, have a distributed team and have people everywhere from Rome to people on the West Coast, Seattle, San Francisco. So I think as we've grown, first of all, there are people who, really want to live in New York. Like that's been a good draw for us. We haven't constrained ourselves to New York sort of by design so we can sort of find and hire the best people. But, at this point, you kind of lose that never ending drumbeat of just people talking about technology all the time in San Francisco. But I think at this point, people realize, there's great talent everywhere. There's a lot of good reasons to live other places. And I think in the long term, that'll help us sort of win and come out ahead.
Yeah, very, very cool. For anybody who's a longtime listener to the show, they may have picked up on Mitch's voice. Mitch was a guest, a Cloudcast alum back in 2016 when he was with DigitalOcean. So good to have alumni back on the show and see people going into new areas and new things. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the Clubhouse platform. Obviously, at a high level, it's designed to help, like you mentioned, developers, build software more efficiently, collaborate more, bring in additional groups into that process, have visibility. What did you guys see before you started the platform? There's lots of other tools out there that people use, everything from, Trello boards and Kanban and different tools for how you manage projects. What did you feel like was sort of fundamentally broken in the software development collaboration process, and what's really core to Clubhouse that tries to fix some of those things?
Well, I think having run a lot of engineering teams over the years and used, pretty much every tool in the market, I think there are a few things we saw. I mean, one thing, fundamentally is that I think a lot of these tools, people really don't like using. They can be slow, it's old software, bloated, and just from an engineering side perspective, making your engineering and product team unhappy never seems like a great goal there. So I think when we started to hack around this a few years ago, Slack had just come out. It showed us that sort of if you can build a tool that people really like and love using, it'll really improve sort of their day-to-day life tools that you sort of have to deal with every day. But the other piece there is just sort of, when you get to a certain size, in my experience, in a lot of places, you lock a lot of these tools down and say, okay, only the engineers can touch this, or this piece is only for, this team, nobody else do anything. So you kind of don't have a lot of safety. Things can go wrong. You don't know what happened. But on top of that, the other parts of the organization, as organizations grow, tend to lose visibility into what's going on, right? Either because, if you tell someone, hey, just go look at this Jira project, they're not going to be able to understand and parse that unless they have a lot of context. So what we try to do from the very beginning is sort of provide additional levels of abstraction sort of up. So if you say these are the 5 big priorities for our organization this quarter, you should be able to go in and just sort of see progress against those. And then if you want to dive into the details, you can. But ultimately, if you're just seeing a bunch of tickets, right, it's not going to tell you how things are progressing there. You need to be able to pull back and see what's happening there. And I think the final thing is, to that point of the rest of the organization losing context, there are a lot of people that should be involved in this, right? You have to be able to have your engineering team, your marketing team, your product team, your sales team, your DevOps team, all those different pieces. You have to be able to say, all right, one of those big priorities is X. Like, how's that going? Like, all I care about is X this quarter. How do I zoom to that, see what's happening, understand, if I'm a product marketer, when this looks like it's going to go out the door? Because, I don't, in all the organizations I've worked in for the last 10, 15 years, we don't do, release version 2.0. We do releasing stuff every day, right? And there's a lot of moving pieces to make sure everything's sort of put together so that when that feature or whatever you're working on goes out the door, everything from the help desk gets updated to people that need to, training can get kicked off for people that need it, all the different pieces there. And being able to sort of track all those different pieces in one place and make sure you can see it, I think has been a huge win for us and a lot of people that are using Clubhouse currently.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of moving parts, and you mentioned things like Slack and some of these other tools. And one thing I've certainly noticed over the years is this trend of a lot of tools get adopted, at least initially, or, a lot of tools just have really, really deep roots and a lot of traction. And so, developers can be a little, finicky in their taste of their tools sometimes, and really kind of grab hold and gravitate towards some, and then maybe just reject others extremely quickly. And so how are you handling that kind of workflow or fitting seamlessly into the workflow? Is it like you're trying to solve some really unique problems? Is it you're trying to work with as many other tools that are out there to fit in as easily as you can? Like, what's been your approach to try and make sure everyone, adopts it and is happy with this?
Yeah, I think sort of our baseline there is keeping developers happy. Like, most of the company here, and a lot of the early company especially, came from an engineering background, and I think we really want people ultimately, or developers, to think of Clubhouse as the developer tool. I think a lot of other tools are seen as sort of manager tools, right? Like, you can use them to sort of command and control your team on certain levels, but we want engineers and developers to work where they want to work, right? So one of the first things we built was what at the time I think was probably one of the most sophisticated GitHub integrations, where you could you can do your work in GitHub. It's very easy to hook the work you're doing back to Clubhouse. And, as you worked, as you open pull requests, as you put things in code review, you could just set up triggers so everything moved along. And I know some other tools do that now, but a few years ago, I think we were the first one to sort of take that and say, look, we know that you don't want to be in this tool every day. You don't want to spend every morning sort of like updating your status, right? So how can we get closer to where you're working at and make it easy for you to work that way? And we're actually revamping that and revamping some Slack integrations. You can drive it from Slack if you want to work from Slack. From our perspective, having good data and being able to sort of very quickly focus in and see the status of things when you need it, but not make it a chore as much as possible, where you have to go in and update things and do things like that day to day. But I think the other piece there too is, like, we have sort of a relentless focus on making sure that things are fast. You always have an up-to-date view of the world, but you don't waste your time. And I think that's been a big win for us compared to a lot of other tools out there.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, you guys are kind of a unique story in that, like you said, over 1,000 organizations now using the platform. I mean, like, literally, limited to no marketing, all word of mouth, all, driven organically. For folks that might go, gosh, 1,000 customers, I feel like I'm out of the loop. I hadn't heard of Clubhouse. Give us a kind of a walkthrough of, what is the day of the life of an organization that's looking, that's using Clubhouse look like? Walk us through what does a developer do, and how do you make their life easier? And then how do you maybe make, somebody in a non-developer thing kind of fit into that? Kind of walk us through maybe what some of the key integrations are, or just some of the things that you do automatically that people just kind of love, and what's helped you grow the business.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one thing that we do that I don't think really any other tool has a real equivalent of is we have a concept called Spaces, where you can basically zoom into a focused set of teams and projects and epics and stories and things that you're working on, right? Or your team is working on. So I think for a lot of teams, the first thing they do is go in, they choose their space that can be shared across the entire organization. And that just gives them a view of the world that they're working on. And if you're a developer, say a lot of your day is just, picking up the next thing off the top of the stack and getting to work on it or continuing to work on things, right? And that's just, reading through, maybe putting some comments in that will, either ping people through Slack or email or through our mobile app, however they have notifications set up. But, it's have the conversation and then basically, go back to the tools that, check out the code, create a branch, whatever it is, and continue to work on that. Same thing, we product managers, same thing, dive into the space that represents the work you're working on, make sure things are organized, make sure you can see how things are moving, all the way up to marketing people. We sort of the core concept of Clubhouse is a story, like an agile story. A lot of teams will have their marketing team in there. They'll have their own stories that sort of track and are dependent upon the engineering stories and the testing that occurs and things like that, right? But your daily interaction with Clubhouse is sort of diving in, seeing what work has been done, picking up what it is that you need to work on, and then going back to your tools and working on it. But letting everybody sort of see the progress, see how things are going is sort of the key interaction there that people have many times a day.
And what is kind of we're up against the end of time here, but so quick final question. With as many customers as you have, everyone tends to have those unexpected consequences or unexpected ways to use it. Is there any like interesting stories of things that have been lessons learned as you've built everything up, or maybe a feature that ended up being more popular or something you didn't anticipate necessarily from day one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we built and we thought about sort of how to pull together teams, this concept of a space that I've brought up a couple times that sort of brings everybody together to build things, at first was kind of like, let's just throw this in here. It was actually something somebody threw together on the front end. It's just, I need to be able to have visibility across all these teams, and there's no easy way to do it. And we just kind of, tossed it in early on. And we realized pretty quickly what we had sort of put together and happened upon. And it's been a great surprise that, we have companies of several hundred users that are using, Clubhouse in one workspace. And, we go talk to them and they have a bunch of spaces and say, oh, well, this squad, is working on this, and they just zoom in and they, instead of the 1,000, stories or tickets that you would have normally in a thing, they only see these like 30 things, and this is how they organize themselves. So, it was something that it was solving a problem that we had, and I don't think when we originally built it in there, we would have ever guessed like how much it's resonated and how well it's gone and how well it's worked for a lot of teams. So. It's really become, really part of the core of things that people really find valuable on Clubhouse over time.
Yeah. Let me. Aaron said he was going to ask you one last question. I had one other thing that popped into my mind. I was kind of looking through your list of customers, and something dawned on me. I was listening to an interview with a guy named John Chambers, who had run Cisco for a long time, and he was talking about, how a lot of big companies have reached kind of the plateau of how much they can add people and be productive. And so a lot of new productivity, a lot of new ideas are going to come out of startups. Obviously that's happened for a long time, but a lot of your customers are essentially startups. Do you find that, that the startup, not just the startup community, but sort of distributed companies, smaller companies with, have to do everything to compete against larger companies, that you're giving them kind of a unique advantage because you didn't build siloed tools. You built these integrated tools that give everybody visibility and kind of help them compete like a big company. Do you hear that sort of feedback somewhat?
Yeah, I think we hear that, companies want to move faster, right? Like a lot of our companies, customers, really are trying to move as fast as they can to compete with big companies. And everything from, little startups to, companies like Elastic. Elastic is, a big public company. They have almost their entire engineering team running on Clubhouse at this point, from what we hear, or at least a fairly big portion of it. And they moved from another tool, which, will remain nameless, but they just wanted to move faster, and they wanted to make it easier to communicate. And they are a distributed company, and, they don't have, a big boardroom where everybody sits down every day and, syncs on all of this stuff, right? So you have to have, especially for a company like that, where it's a 24-hour-a-day company around the world, you have to be able to, see the progress. You can't have, your marketing team sitting next to the engineering team working on things, right? It has to be communicated asynchronously, and it has to be done in a way where people go in, use it, make sure it's up to date. And there can't just be constant sync points, because nothing would ever happen if that was the case, right? So, yeah, totally. I think, and like I said, we're also a distributed company, so we're also a test case for some of this stuff, and it's definitely helped us continue forward.
And another startup to mention that uses Clubhouse, company in Atlanta, Georgia, called Full Story. So they basically record sessions within their customers' product. So they're like a product usage tool, and their whole company has now adopted Clubhouse to organize their projects and organize their software development efforts. And the CEO has said to us several times how much he loves Clubhouse to like have a bird's eye view of like what's happening across the organization, and just there's we feel like we've kind of hit this sweet spot of finding the perfect balance between simplicity and flexibility for engineering teams, where we're able to bring everyone in the organization together to build better products. And we believe that we're the first project management platform to achieve this in our space.
Very cool.
Nice. Yep. And it was funny when you mentioned the constant sync points. I swear I've worked for those companies already. So no, I I share that pain without a doubt. So Kurt and Mitch, thank you very much for your time. I think that kind of wraps it up for this week. Where can everyone find out more about Clubhouse and dig more into the product and follow y'all as well?
Yeah, for sure. We're at clubhouse.io is our website. On Twitter, I'm just Kurt, K-U-R-T, so easy to find.
Oh, wow. You were early to get that one.
I think I was at one of the advantages of living in Silicon Valley, I think I was at the meeting where they launched it publicly the first time.
Nice.
That's how I got it.
That's a badge of honor right there, man.
Hey, there's probably a whole podcast about Twitter we could have too. And Mitch,
it's just at Mitch Wainer. You can shoot me a tweet, and I'll definitely respond. And you can also follow Clubhouse on Twitter at Clubhouse.
Nice. Very cool. Well, listen, Kurt and Mitch, thanks you guys for the time. Great to get the word out to our listeners about Clubhouse, about it being out there. Folks, you're now the 1,001th person who've heard about this. Go try it out. Lots of different ways you can try out the platform. But guys, thank you so much for the time today. Thanks for the conversation. And folks, as always, thanks for listening this week. And we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.